at the Electoral Commission and the National Identification Authority, accusing them of potentially putting Ghanaians at risk of contracting the coronavirus with its registration exercises.
I'm only just appealing to the NIA on the basis of human rights, the right to protect our people in terms of their rights to health and hold their gun, because there is so much common sense and wisdom in the presidential directives.
We'll speak live with the Strike Commissioner, who is calling for an immediate suspension of the exercises, plus hear from two Ghanaians who sued the NIA for disregarding the ban on public gatherings. Also tonight, the National Association of Teachers revealed teachers will struggle to use online platforms following the President's call for the GES to conduct online education as COVID-19 confines many students to their homes.
A lot of teachers will be challenged in the use of IT in teaching in this country. Myself, the president of NAGRAT, talking to you, is IT challenged.
We'll tell you about the alternative learning platforms, including the Joy Learning platform to keep your children busy during the coronavirus lockdown. Also, how some countries, including China and Israel, are deploying advanced technology and innovative contact tracing strategies to win the war against COVID-19.
It developed an innovative testing strategy and expanded lab capacity. It rationed the use of masks. It did exhaustive contact tracing and testing in selected areas.
In business, Citi continues to struggle to stable against the dollar as it takes the hit the coronavirus has affected a lot of economies around the world.
And still talking about the coronavirus impact, English football suspension extended until at least April 30. Also, the Ghana Olympic Committee has endorsed the IOC's decision to stick to the start date of the Olympic Games despite the COVID-19 outbreak.
Well, we're talking about COVID-19, but there's also meningitis that has already killed 18 people in the Upper West region. Health officials there call for similar attention given to COVID-19 prevention and containment.
So far, we've recorded about 18 deaths, but the biggest challenge is that because the whole country is singing coronavirus disease, so people's attention have been diverted from meningitis, which is even more virulent.
You want to stay with us for all that and more? Join me via WhatsApp 0244340437. Send me your thoughts or share with the rest of the world. My name is Evans Mensah. I want to start tonight from Parliament, where currently Parliament is considering the emergency legislation that will give the President powers to limit your movement and also back his directives to ban public gatherings. You've already heard from former Deputy Attorney General Mr. Dominic Ayine, who is raising concerns with the wording of the particular legislation. He's currently still with me on the line. My colleague Joseph Bokugakpo is also following closely with an update on how this is being handled on the floor. Mr. Ayine, let me ask you, you raised a lot of concerns. You've laid out your minority concerns. One of the key things you said was that it had nothing specifically to do with coronavirus. But Masid, I've heard the Deputy Attorney General make a key point why they have drafted the legislation to be this broad. I want you to listen to his justification for why they have made this particular legislation this broad. This is your colleague, Joseph Benkadiop.
The president is not operating in a vacuum. He's operating within a legal framework. And if we do pass this into law, and then it is being implemented and anybody finds that the president is abusing the law or his discretionary power, can go for a pronouncement by a court to declare that to the extent that the president's conduct or actions are contrary to statute or law or the constitution, then to that extent they are a nullity. You can go for that pronouncement. You see, we are not living in a totalitarian state. We are living in a state governed by rules and regulations. And remember that Article 1(2) of the Constitution says that any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is a case of the inconsistency and nullity. So any person who thinks that what we are doing is a nullity can go and challenge it in court after we pass it into an act. But I am saying that it is in response to an extraordinary circumstance that we are bringing.
Because the concern from the minority is that the bill itself doesn't mention anything having to do with the coronavirus situation, and that these are issues that the Public Health Act could have dealt with expeditiously.
I have given them an answer to that. You see, Lord, as I've already indicated a short while ago, why do we enact legislation? We do it purposely to be able to fill in a lacuna that has been created. That's the purpose of enacting legislation. And we are saying that nobody ever anticipated corona. I did not anticipate it, and I know you did not. Now, this has sprung a surprise on us. And going into the future, another thing I want to draw your attention to is that you never know what the future holds for all of us. Whether or not, after we've overcome corona, there are others that will come up in future. We are not aware of that. So this is futuristic. So that we don't do knee-jerk reaction to situations when they arise. We are doing this in contemplation that any other future thing that will arise will be contemplated by this and will be covered by this, so that we don't go looking for making any other laws. And laws are made to address those situations.
Dr. Ayine, isn't it better to have a legislation that gives a president broad powers for unforeseen future eventualities, rather than narrow this down to coronavirus, and tomorrow when the next unforeseen eventuality comes, then we are scrambling to do another emergency legislation?
If that is your summary of what my colleague, the Deputy Attorney General, has said, then it is rather unfortunate, because he was saying that we are living in a constitutional democracy that is governed by law, and that we are not living in a totalitarian state. On the contrary, and paradoxically, it is the imposition of restrictions bill that may end up creating a totalitarian state. Because if you give the executive branch powers that are broad, without any limitations, without the constitutional safeguards, without the checks and balances that can make it possible for those powers to be curtailed and not be abused, then that is where you head towards, down the road of a totalitarian state.
He says the courts are there to do that check, and that if you disagree, you can go to court.
No, Evans, just look at the bill and tell me where, it subjects the president's powers to the judicial process. In any case, all right, Article 31 is very clear about how you declare a state of emergency. If the president had wanted to exercise these powers to suspend the operations of Chapter 5 in order to deal broadly with, and specifically with the crisis that we are faced with, he could have declared a state of emergency. And you can tell from the Constitution that there are checks that Parliament will give him that power, to exercise it, broadly within 3 months. And after 3 months, he has to come and justify to the elected representatives of the people why he should be granted these powers, re-granted these powers. But that is not what is happening here. What they have done is cleverly to circumvent Article 31, all right, and then grant the president powers that would otherwise have been exercised if a state of emergency had been declared, all right. And by the way, there is no lacuna in the law now. There is no void in, a legislative void that is being filled. Reenacting the exceptions in 21 does not fill any legislative void in existence. Because if it were just a question of filling a void, the Constitution itself is a piece of legislation, but it is the super legislation. It is the legislation of all legislation. So if you are talking about a legislative void, the Constitution already provides for it. So why do you have to, waste the time of Parliament to enact a law to grant the president these broad powers, right? And I have also pointed out that there are laws in existence that deal comprehensively with these matters. Particularly in the case of the coronavirus, we have the Public, Health Act, which has provisions under the miscellaneous, sections of the Act, dealing comprehensively with public health crisis. All right, and the powers of the minister to people when a public health crisis, hits. And if they are talking about emergency disasters, what about the NATMO Act? Okay, if you are talking about the exercise of broad emergency powers, dealing with situations of crises that are unrelated to public health, what about the Emergency Powers Act? Even you should be pointing them to all these pieces of legislation in existence. A reenactment of Article and the exceptions thereunder will not, solve any problem. It's a waste of parliamentary time.
Final question, nonetheless, this is still in Parliament. From what I hear, the suggestion. The President is asking for it to be considered, and the certificate of urgency. What's the minority going to do with the concerns that you have now?
Well, I can tell you the results of our deliberations this morning at committee, or the Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. The committee ended its deliberations, and the report is yet to be submitted to Parliament. But we, the minority members, decided to vote against the bill being tabled on a certificate of urgency, because we think that, as we said, the coronavirus, if it were focused on coronavirus, it should have been urgent. It is not focused on coronavirus. It is focused on granting the president powers that are overbroad and unconstitutional. A power that says that the president can determine that a crime has been committed and determine by executive instrument, the penalty to be imposed. That is patently unconstitutional, as being contrary to Article 19, Clause 11 of our Constitution. We will not allow that to go on a certificate of urgency.
I'm grateful. That is the former Deputy Attorney General under the John Mahama administration, also a Member of Parliament, Dr. Dominic Ayine. Earlier, you had the current Deputy Attorney General, Joseph Benke Diop. My colleague, Joseph Opoku Gakpo, is in Parliament following this development for us tonight. Joseph, Parliament took a break to consider this particular legislation. Are they back, and what is the indication of what the timelines for passage of this?
And so they are not yet back. I saw the first deputy speaker just able to walk in a while ago. It's likely he'll be presiding over sitting. And so we're waiting to see what would happen going forward. Let me just get a quick update on what's likely to happen this evening. Martin Inam is Deputy Majority Whip. The minority are asking for withdrawal of the restriction of imposition bill. Will that happen? Or this evening we can expect you, the majority, to use your numbers to push through that particular document?
What are you just talking about numbers? It's about numbers. It's about we all need it, okay? And I remember when we went to the presidency, there was a commitment that we're all going to help the president. We're going to unite behind the states to make sure that at least this directive that has been given, some kind of legislation will pass to help at least enforcement. So it's not about some people being majority and some people being minority. I don't think that is the situation.
But in the interest of further consensus building, will you put brakes on the processes this evening to allow for that proper consensus building to get the buy-in of the minority before the report of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee gets approved this evening?
In fact, what we are going to do this evening is to actually debate on whether it is urgent or it's not urgent.
And that's the position the minority holds, that they think it's not urgent because it mentions nothing corona.
Well, anyway, that's what we're going to debate. And I think that if anybody thinks it is not urgent, I disagree with the person. As we speak, it is about the corona or the COVID-19. And we all know that for now we have even increased from 7 and we are talking about 11. So there is some kind of urgency. And I'm sure that obviously we wouldn't be doing this partisanship. We need everybody to reason behind this particular bill.
Martin Inamde, he is the Deputy Majority Chief Whip, the first Deputy Majority Chief Whip. So what we're expecting in the next few minutes is that Ben Abdallah, who is the Chairman of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee, will be presenting a report of the committee recommending that the House adopt their decision that this document should be actually looked at under a certificate of urgency with all the processes waived so they can run with it. And the minority has indicated they will oppose that, and it's possible that this may go down to the wire and we may see a vote on whether to approve that particular decision or otherwise. It's a long night ahead, Evan.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And Joseph Bokugapo, my colleague in Parliament, we are keeping an eye on this development. Once that leg of it starts, consideration will bring you the very latest on this emergency legislation. To some other coronavirus-related stories, though, tonight the Electoral Commission and the National Identification Authority have both come under heavy criticism by the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, CHRAJ, for the insistence on going ahead with the registration exercises. As you know by now, the EC says its planned registration of voters will go ahead in spite of calls by some sections of society to suspend it in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak. The NIA, on the other hand, is currently undertaking registration in the Eastern region. The decision to go ahead with that particular exercise has been criticized also by the minority as well as the Ghana Medical Association, which is warning that if the exercise is allowed to proceed, it could create a fertile ground for the potential spread of COVID-19 In the last few hours, Shraj has asked the NIA to immediately suspend the ongoing Ghana card registration processes in compliance with the President's order. We can now speak to Mr. Joseph Whittal. He is, of course, the Commissioner Shraj. He joins us on the telephone line right now. Thank you, sir, for your time here on Newsnight. Is there a legal basis for Shraj making this call for the NIA to suspend its operations?
Thank you, Evans. When you talk about legal basis, we are the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. And so the human rights issues embedded in the directives of the President, and for that matter, the WHO precautionary measures and protocols, are what are expected to advance and protect the rights to health and the life of Ghanaians. And so those are the issues that we are articulating.
So we know that as far as the NIA is concerned, they've issued a statement saying the decision to proceed does not violate the President's directive. But I've seen your statement. You actually quote constitutional provisions to anchor your position.
Right, Evans. Look, if you look at Article 12 of the Constitution, it's very clear. The article says the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, and all other organs of government, that includes NIA, and legal persons, legal or natural, shall respect the fundamental rights of the Constitution. Now we are talking about COVID-19. Basically, the right to health and the right to life of Ghanaians and all persons in Ghana is an issue. So we are talking about an exercise that is expected to bring a number of people together in close contacts. I understand the statement says they will manage to make it 25. Even the 25, the experts, the medical experts, are not even sure whether that number is a scientifically proven one. All we are dealing with is a COVID-19 virus that is defying every definition of how to contain such pandemics. And I'm saying that let's not go into nitpicking, whether it is the President has directed that it should be a conference or a seminar and all those things. Where people are gathered, there's a tendency for touching and for passing on. And we deal with largely illiterate, ignorant people, Ghanaians. And we know our habits. Why do we expose them to this? Why don't we wait for the four weeks of the presidential directive to pass? And then we can, now know whether we can proceed or not. And you and I know that we're not testing sufficiently. And the numbers that may stare us in the face if we are beginning to test sufficiently will be staggering. I don't intend to scare anybody because I'm not a medical doctor or a medical person, but we now have abundance of information globally that the community spread and transmission is the biggest problem. And that is my concern and the Commission's concern. And why don't we wait? It's not about the President's directive only, but it's about the right to life and to health for people not to be exposed so that we can do the exercise later. That's all.
For the Electoral Commission, though, in their statement, they say they will go ahead, but they will announce a new date, which means that they won't do it in April as originally scheduled. Isn't that, I guess, aren't they being sensitive to the directives and to the times you're in? But you have a concern with their approach too.
I would say they at least are being sensitive. But I wish that we don't make it so certain. Because the pandemic is is mutating all around, and we don't know. America right now, in Europe, countries are locking down, cities are locking down. How do we know about Ghana? So why don't we just wait when we are sure, when the 4 weeks are over and we think that we have studied the pattern, then you can issue the directives as to whether it is still possible to do it. But my concern is, let's not unnecessarily expose Ghanaians to risk, to health problems, and in fact death because of registration and because of elections.
Can they be compelled to comply with the constitutional provisions as you've articulated? Is there a cause in court or in law to get that to happen?
Well, everything is justiciable for us. As far as I'm concerned, the human rights provisions in Articles 5 and 6 are justiciable rights. Any person in Ghana has a right to proceed to court to exercise his rights if he thinks that the EC and the NIA registrations are a problem. That is inclusive in the commission. So for me, I think we shouldn't even be contemplating court action. Why don't we look at a common sense approach?
So far as we know, NIA has issued several statements. They have been very strong on this. They've called all the bluffs, even the medical association bluff as well. They're going to go ahead, and so it doesn't appear that mere appeals will convince them to suspend at least.
And that is where the administrative justice issues will kick in. If we are not careful and we exercise our power in such a way that in the end we create a big problem for the people of Ghana, that is where the exercise of power will be questioned. So for me, for now, I would advise the NIA to tread cautiously, because even in the U.S., Trump has climbed down from his high falutin position to come to understanding that this COVID-19 is a whole different animal. So why don't we take our time?
Is Raj in a position to do anything itself on this matter?
I think we will take that position when we see that the evidence requires it.
I'm grateful, Mr. Whittal, for joining us here on Newsnight. On the telephone line with me is one member of a group that has now gone to court on this particular matter, dragging the NIA to court, challenging their decision to proceed with the registration exercise on the matter. One of them is Mark Oliver Kevo, joins me on the telephone line right now. Mr. Kevo, thank you for your time here on Newsnight.
Thank you, Evans, and good evening to your listeners.
So you filed the suit when? Today?
Yes, this morning.
This morning, is it at the High Court?
Yes, at the Human Rights Court.
What's your beef with the NIA?
Well, fundamentally, it's about our human rights. It's about our right, first of all, to health, to good health, and to live, and also it's also about our right to acquire a card that makes a citizen. First of all, we took motivation from the president's speech about a week ago, giving certain specific directives concerning social gatherings and all that because of this dreaded pandemic that is scaring everybody now. And there has been calls for the National Identification Authority to halt or suspend its operations until we all have a clear way of dealing with this pandemic. And till now, the National Identification Authority has been adamant about it. First, you have seen information from the Ghana Medical Association, the one from National Union of Ghana Students. There has been others from the public, others from Shraj, as you were just discussing. And none of them seem to move the National Identification Authority. So as citizens, we think we can assert our rights and then see if the court can halt the National Identification Authority.
Okay, so specifically, what release are you seeking?
Oh, that the court grants us an injunction until some of these issues are resolved. The court should injunct the National Identification Authority from continuing with its operations. Even if you come to the Eastern region, if you go to various centers, you get scared for the ordinary people. And in about some few hours ago, we have seen that the National Identification Authority has populated its website with pictures of people observing social distances of 1 meter from each other and all that. And all that is propaganda just to tell the general public that they are doing the right thing and all that. But if you go to the grounds, you will find out that those pictures were purposely taken just to create a particular impression. When you go visit a particular center, because people do not know when they are supposed to come, because there's no pre-booking and all that, you are not able to determine how many people will visit a particular center to be registered in a day. So, in a good day, over 100 or 200 people appear to be registered. Then you go and select 25 out of them, put them in a room, space them, take pictures, and say that these people are observing social distances. So it is appropriate and in line with the president's directive. Meanwhile, there are others who are gathered outside who are interacting with each other, and you don't know who is infected, who is going to transmit, and all that. So we are all scared of our lives. We have not been able to register because when you move close to the center and you see some of these things, you have no option than to go back, to go home.
Yeah, Mark Oliver Kevel, I'm grateful that you joined us. He's one of those who dragged the NIA to court tonight. And just to indicate, yesterday we sent our reporter, across the Eastern region trying to monitor the situation, and he came back with a report that, in fact, the registration exercise is breaching the scientific advice. In these times of coronavirus, the social distancing was simply not being adhered. The sanitizers were not available in many of the places he visited. The registration officers did not have the protection they require to do this in a safe environment with coronavirus upon us. The Medical Association also confirmed same. They also did their own check before they issued the statement asking the NIA to simply suspend the exercise. And so those are verifiable facts on the ground that our reporters themselves had verified, that as of yesterday, many of the places were crowded. And that's the fertile ground for coronavirus to spread. The NIA is insisting they will go ahead with that. Now it's gone to court. Let's see how the court deals with it. Now, government plan for the Ghana Education Service to conduct online education as COVID-19 confines many students to their homes may be jeopardized as it emerges. Many teachers across the country are IT challenged. As you know, all schools have been shut down as part of measures to prevent the spread of coronavirus. But the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAGRAT, has revealed teachers will struggle to use online platforms. Speaking on PM Express, President of NAGRAT, Angel Kabonu, said most teachers, including himself, do not have the capacity to do what is being asked of them.
I was at a meeting with the Director General of Ghana Education Service and his officials, and they've even indicated that a site is being developed, or it has even been developed, where the subject areas will be placed there so that students can access those sites and then for self-study. If there is a crisis in the nation, then all of us will have to come together to find a solution to it. So television stations will have to start asking themselves the question that if we have our case at home, then what type of program should we be showing during the day?
And how many of your teachers have the capacity, if we migrate this online, to actually use it?
I would not be able to give exact figures, but I can assure you that a lot of teachers will be challenged in the use of IT in teaching in this country.
Okay.
That I can tell you.
But you said the meeting you had with the GES, that's thinking now.
Yeah,
to move it online.
Yeah, to move it
but
online.
But then you are admitting that teachers will struggle to use that online platform.
Even teachers to struggle. Myself, the president of NAGRAT, talking to you is IT challenged.
Okay.
Are you with me?
Yeah.
And this is something that I think that teachers in this country, all of us, including myself, we have to begin taking seriously that, look, the time has come where the way to go is to develop your IT capacity to be able to communicate information from the classroom to the student, wherever the student finds him or herself. It's relatively a very new thing in our country here, and I don't think that we have prepared ourselves, the infrastructure and the skills to be able to do that effectively.
So that is Angel Kabonu. He's the president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers. We're making attempts to reach out to the Ghana Education Service on this particular approach going into the next 4 weeks that the students will be at home at the least, because this is subject to review. Whilst we wait for that clarity, I can tell you about a solution that Multimedia has introduced. Is the Multimedia's TV channel. It's called the Joy Learning. Nana Yao Siedu is a senior channel executive at Multi TV and is in the studio with me. First of all, Nana, what's the objective of the channel?
Thank you for this opportunity. I want to say hi to all our listeners at home, especially parents, and then to welcome all children back from school. So once upon a time, Multimedia was sponsoring needy but brilliant students across the nation. So when there came our SHS free education, and then later the double track system. Then we realized that, okay, there's a gap somewhere. So this big initiative came in when we introduced the Joy Learning channel to expand this great initiative for more students to have access to education at anywhere, anytime, and everywhere in Ghana.
So far as you have a television, you have a digibox,
yes.
You can watch this.
Yes. So while some students were in school, some were actually patronizing the channel since 30th of December last year. So it's been on until this
directive came in.
This new season called
COVID-19 came. Well, what are the contents on it though? What specifically? What should parents look for?
We have content for SHS students. We are now introducing for GHS. But we have a package. We have the TV lessons and we have digital platform lessons too. We have partnered with Wolo TV, Wolo e-learning project. So when you watch the content on TV, you have an opportunity to go on the app. That's woloafrique.com, and then access subject forums, lessons. If you want to, pose questions to some of our.
You actually teachers. Can pose questions.
Yes, you can set questions, and then you can also answer. We have quizzes online. You can do that. So there's a digital platform. So we are introducing that to parents. We are telling parents not to fret. They shouldn't worry, because there's a platform. There's TV at home that is given 18 hours of educational content from 6:30 a.m. to about 8:30.
How does one access the channel?
You can buy a digibox. You can only buy a digibox to access Joy Learning. So you buy a digibox, and then you have to also download the Wolo app to access the digital platform lessons. Okay,
Nana, thank you very much. And so that's how you can access it. Filling in the gap now that children are home, just tuning to the Joy Learning. Yes, do you know what the channel is? What's the channel number?
The channel, no, it doesn't have a number. You only have to get an installer to support you to rescan your box, and then you find the channel
on there. So just look for Joy Learning.
Just look for Joy Learning.
Okay. Thank you very much. Still ahead here on News Night, we bring you the story of how the coronavirus is affecting other countries, but also the key question about how other countries are being very aggressive in doing contact tracing and the technologies they are deploying to be effective in winning this war. I want to stay with us for that. George Wiafe is here with the business news. Before George, though, short break.
success our passion. Free no day, for Vodafone, Vodafone cash, send money for free.
There are no charges or deductions when you send money on Vodafone cash. Just dial *110# to send any amount of money as many times as you like to any Vodafone number for free.
Who's free no day?
The future is exciting. Ready?
Hey, I say, mix the cement in correct proportional.
Hey, contractor.
Hey, Buccaneer, what's your soul?
Yeah, Malande. Sorry, I say. When you attend the year of return, Ankasa. Hey, contractor. A danya wasting ye. Hey, what push mama me feeling too much?
Who project here? Me friend a gas them from top to down. If you are a gas them.
Hey, yes, solid pa.
Hey, you see gas them man. If for soup in our do. On your quality no question. So gas them cement biara. I will cook a crab be. Over 5,000 plus communities. And a gas them. I donations. SCC schools, I built a clinic. No one packaging now. What's Shadara and environmentally friendly?
Never compromise on quality. Choose the value Gassam offers you always. Gassam, the nation builder.
And George Affe is here with business. Hello, George.
Hi, Evans. And coming up in business, City is continuing to struggle to stabilize against the dollar as it takes the heat from the effect of the coronavirus, which has affected a lot of economies outside, and government moves to avert any shortage of food supplies in the country. I'll be telling you more details on that one. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one stop shop for all your office essentials. And First National Bank, we are the bank that understands your business. First National Bank. How can we help you? And it has been 25 years of joy and supporting those burdened entrepreneurs out there. Let's now settle for the details. The Ghana city is still struggling to stabilize against the dollar over the past 2 weeks. Now, this is a result of the negative reaction coming from some offshore investors that actually participate heavy in our bonds. We understand the city has lost about 6% in value over the past 2 weeks. But how bad is the situation? What can be done to ensure that things doesn't get out of hand? There is more in the Business Desk report.
The pressure on the Ghana city has been influenced by the decision of some offshore investors that had interest in our bonds to get out. This should mean that the Bank of Ghana may have to look for dollars and pay off these investors that are opting for an exit. This was to ensure that these investors are insulated from the uncertainty that has come about as a result of the coronavirus, which had crippled the global economy. According to APSA, the Ghana city has lost more than 6% of its value against the dollar over 2 weeks, and it appears the pressure is not ending anytime soon. This is despite the regular intervention of dollars onto the market by the Bank of Ghana. For instance, we understand that the central bank this week released about $13 million in its bid to ease the pressure on the local currency. The local currency was selling to the dollar at around 5 cedis 23 pesos some 3 weeks ago. As of this week, it's being sold by some banks at around 5 cedis 65 pesos against the dollar. There are even fears by some analysts that the situation could get out of hand if this virus is not contained anytime soon. APSA Ghana, for instance, is even warning that if things should stay as it is, then the cedi could depreciate sharply, beating its year opener of 5 cedis 73 pesos. For some, this situation might not be good for the economy because of the impact of the depreciation of the cedi on inflation, cost of doing business, as well as living in the country. Many would also be looking forward to see what the Bank of Ghana will be doing to help stabilize the situation in the next few days as they review the health of the economy.
And that was a Business Desk report. Now, despite this challenge, the Ghana cedi is the second best currency in Africa, according to APSA. We also understand that the Bank of Ghana this week upped its support by releasing some $33 million onto the market. The Ghana Employees Association is asking its members to allow non-essential staff to work online. Now, this was contained in an advisory note sent to its members. Let's hear from Alex Frimpong, who is the chief executive of the association.
One of the control measures in stemming the spread of the virus is when people come together. So if people converge, potentially it can lead to the spread of the disease. So in a situation where in the workplace you have teams working together, then potentially that can be a challenge. So our advice is that for members who have that facility, as much as possible, they should encourage people to work online thanks to technology so that they can still maintain their output.
The cases have gotten to 11. There are thoughts that they could even go up further. Would you encourage your members also to temporarily shut down because that could also help?
Well, I think that all these shutdowns would significantly rely on government directives, and that would determine whether or not businesses would be compelled to shut down, because they would assess the overall situation and determine what is best for the country.
Alex Frimpong is the chief executive of the Ghana Employers Association. Now, government is taking steps to avert any shortfall of supply of food, and some essential goods that are produced locally are not affected. It is therefore working to set up a committee led by industries in Ghana. Now, this was the outcome of a meeting between the Association of Ghana Industries and government. Said Chuma Kobwa is chief executive of the association.
So a committee is being set up, and they will be discussing how best to work out this. And I'm sure that as we sit down to strategize and plan, there will definitely be a solution. I said, immediately we have some materials, but when it goes beyond a certain period, we have no choice than to make every effort to bring in some material. What we can do as a nation, and I think as is being discussed, is that we can put resources together, we can put requirements together, and do bulk sourcing of some essential materials to supply to the factories. And I think this is all going to be part of the discussion. Normally, the challenge is the financing arrangement. If financing is weak, then access buying in bulk becomes a challenge. But I think this is something that can be discussed with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Trade, and there will be a solution to that as well.
Sir Chuma Kobwa is the chief executive of the Ghana Association of Industries. Now, the chief executive of the Ghana Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors, Senya Hosi, is asking consumers to be measured with their expectations from the oil marketing companies in reducing prices at the pumps. According to him, the reduction in fuel prices doesn't conform with the amount of taxes and other cost of operations for the various oil marketing companies. Senya Hosi believes that the price could further come down, but that wouldn't be significant enough. He spoke to Joy Business at a short press conference in Accra to respond to some concerns of consumers.
We just account for about 67% of the whole price of the program. The rest is 63%. Those things don't go with crude prices or no crude prices so directly. Then the other one you have is the exchange rate. The exchange rates do not necessarily move at the rate of crude prices. So you can actually have a drop and a rise in FX rate. You can cancel everything. The dollar portions, but taxes haven't changed. OMG margins haven't changed. The price of tank farm storage hasn't changed. The port charges haven't changed because food prices are. So I'll go back and dwell on the international market price.
Senya Hosi is the chief executive of the Ghana Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors, and that's all for business on Newsnight Evans.
George, thank you very much. And in fact, we've been having a conversation about how everybody is home now. I'm talking about the schools. Children are home, university all the way down to kindergarten. We've just been having a conversation about the alternatives. If you're moving the studies online, teachers say they've told us they don't have the capacity. They are not IT compliant. It's good to hear from parents themselves who are now casting doubt on the sustainability of this.
Last week, Monday, they were asked to check our phones. There will be message or call on Thursday. Thursday, nothing happened. Friday, nothing happened. Saturday, nothing happened. Then we decided to come today and check what is going on. Up to now, they give us Thursday. We didn't hear anything.
And when you arrived?
Nobody was there. When I came, they took my information particularly. I was asked to go home. They will call me. If it is today that Jesus will come, that they will call me. I'll be waiting for the call. If I'm going to bath, the phone is with me. If I'm eating, any message that come, my heartbeat, I thought maybe they called me, they couldn't get me. Because if you miss the call, that is all. So I always have the phone close to me. Up to today, I didn't hear anything.
If I'm working under you, and I've been asking permission every day to check my child's school replacement, I would be happy. Nah, I've been here since last 2 weeks. When you come, they will just give you forms that you fill.
In Cape Coast University, concerns about the university introducing e-learning systems there. Listen to some of the students who spoke to us.
This e-learning wouldn't help us, the students. This is because
those of us who don't have money to buy bundle and other stuff, like, we wouldn't benefit from this. And even some of us, our phones, we are using Yamzo. How can we learn?
With me, this e-learning thing, honestly, it's not the best, in my opinion, because in the first place, not every student on campus has gadgets, either a phone or a laptop, that can access the internet. And even with those of us who have it, not all of us have, let me say, money at our disposal to be buying credit here and there.
Okay, so the issue about credit, that's data. It's also very important if you're going to move online. Let's speak to the telecoms chamber. Ken Ashigbe heads the chamber, joins us on the telephone line right now. Mr. Ashigbe, is the telecoms chamber thinking about how to assist with cost of data at all in these times? Hello, Ken.
Multimedia currently are running this learning channel. Has multimedia reduced the price of DG boxes? I'm sure the answer would be no. So, but so it's true that currently where we are, it is critical that we do everything possible to be able to help people live their lives. So people are going to be working from home. People are going to be, students are currently at home. So how do they work? But in all of this, we need to be very careful that we are very deliberate in how we make access to data, whatever I want to use, or make it cheaper for people. You don't want a situation which is being experienced in other countries. If you go to places like Spain, Switzerland, and the UK, that there's a huge surge that is coming on the network and is beginning to affect the stability of network, beginning to affect the quality of experience for everybody. So what we as a chamber want to do, and we are in the process of engaging the regulator, is we have started by offering zero listing the Ghana Health Service, site, because you want to make it a point that when anybody wants to access the site, whether they have data or not, they will be able to get it. So in terms of looking at other critical government portals, other critical like educational platforms, so it would really be targeted so that you don't just provide free or cheaper data that get people to sit on there and then consume bundles and prevent those who really need this data to do critical work. So the options that we are looking at and will be proposing to the regulator is to look at these targeted places. So if they talk about some of these educational platforms that students have to access, what kind of discounts can you give, and you tie it directly to those particular sites. If it comes to health and emergency things, those ones you might even consider zero rating it. If it comes to some critical government portals that people would require to be able to do their work.
So if these measures, of course, there's the agreements on this, it will eventually lead to making these particular targeted websites cheaper to access.
Exactly, that's what would happen. So because that those are the places that people really would require, to be able to deal with. Because you should bear in mind that apart from making the networks resilient, you also are in a situation that currently, if even you needed to do some expansion and you needed to import equipment in, you have challenges even being able to, get these equipment in, even because of the challenges with transport and all of that.
Exactly, and these times are really precarious times. Mr. Ashigbe, I'm grateful that you joined us. More conversations on this as we all begin to come to terms with these times that we're in. Let's do Benedict now. He's here with sports. Hello, Benedict.
Sports also is got to do with coronavirus, and English football will be suspended until at least April 30 because of the continued spread of the virus. Now, all games in England, Premier League, EFL, Women's Super League, and Women's Championship, and all fixtures in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland are currently postponed. The Football Association has also agreed that the current season can be extended, extended indefinitely, and the current rules, the season had been scheduled to end on June 1. Back home, the Ghana Olympic Committee has endorsed the International Olympic Committee's decision to stick to the start date of the Olympic Games despite the COVID-19 outbreak. Now, in a video conference yesterday, Africa voted for the IOC to go ahead despite the outbreak of the virus. And meanwhile, clubs in the Premier League, that's the Ghana Premier League, are still without standard medical personnel.
Africa did what?
Yeah, we actually voted. So the IOC.
So we won the Olympics to go ahead.
No, it's the IOC.
IOC.
They won the Olympics to go ahead.
Okay.
And then they did a video conference yesterday.
So the African bloc.
Yeah, of course.
They won the Olympics to go ahead.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a lot of the elite athletes around the world are asking for for it to be.
So they've asked the athletes to continue training, but they are not going to be qualifiers for the athletes. But we have to talk about the Ghana Premier League because Dr. Pambo has also been speaking about the fact that we don't have standard medical personnel at the Premier League clubs.
Preparedness at the local scene as far as football is concerned, club levels, I do not even see it. Nat, you agree with me? Less than 10% of even the clubs we have in the country have competent medical teams. I do not think we have more than 2 clubs in this country with a qualified doctor attached to them as their team doctor. Most of them, I sit in Accra Sports Stadium and watch them come. Hardly, I've seen big clubs, Kotoko, Hearts come to play, and there is no doctor on their bench. They probably will have a couple of nurses and mazes on them. But I can tell you, there are a few times some doctors will show up when the matches are big, but they come on their own. They are not club doctors. So I don't think it's the best of situation.
All right, so Dr. Prince Pambo is a member of the CAF medical team. Now, we still talk about the impact of coronavirus, and the Ghana Football Association has closed its offices until further notice because of the virus concerns. Now, members of the FA, including clubs, regional football associations, are being reminded to use the online systems of the FA to communicate with the Secretariat until offices reopen. Now, the GFA will continue to engage with the Ministry of Health and the Ghana Health Service on the next steps and inform our staff and stakeholders accordingly of any changes. And Evans, it's become the biggest story in our lifetime, unprecedented. A lot of things, affected sports, business, and when you listen to the news from start to end, it's about COVID-19.
Yes, sign of the times. Thank you very much, Benedict. Now, as the world races to find a breakthrough amid the COVID-19 pandemic, it appears some countries are developing solutions to help them win the war. Now, these solutions have ranged from the development of new rapid test kits to the deployment of advanced contact tracing technologies. My colleague Fifi Kumsing has been studying the situation in countries including Israel and China and the territory of Hong Kong and put this report together.
Don't assume your community won't be affected. Prepare as if it will be. Don't assume you won't be infected. Prepare as if you will be.
Head of the WHO, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, addressing a news conference on the world's response to the pandemic. He talks about what the organization expects of countries faced with the problem.
WHO continues to recommend that isolating, testing, and treating every suspected case and tracing every contact must be the backbone of the response in every country.
But one country that significantly reversed its cases, aside from China, is South Korea. Solutions it deployed include drive-through testing stations and investigations supported by GPS data. Both the United States and the United Kingdom have adopted similar drive-through test clinics as cases of infections surge.
The Republic of Korea was faced with accelerating community transmission. It developed an innovative testing strategy and expanded lab capacity. It rationed the use of masks. It did extensive contact tracing and testing in selected areas. And it isolated suspected cases in these designated facilities rather than hospitals or at home. As a result, cases have been declining for weeks. At the peak, there were more than 800 cases, and yesterday, the report was only 90 cases.
That's the Korean success story. Israel is deploying spy technology. It's just approved the electronic tracking of patients using a digital technology that until now was only used for counterterrorism. The emergency law gives the government the power to use mobile phone data for tracking people infected with COVID-19, including to identify and quarantine others they have come into contact with and may have been infected. Aside from these, the country has deployed strict restrictions. Public gatherings are now limited to 10 people. Leisure and entertainment venues are closed. Restaurants and cafes are shuttered. Public transportation is closed at night. And on weekends, the Israelis are instructed to stay home unless it is necessary to do so. For countries with success stories, the combination of testing, isolation, and treatment has led the way.
So a lot to learn from the countries already dealing with this with technology. They've gone way ahead of us. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We'll be having a lot of discussions on how we're learning from the global experience as we continue our coverage of coronavirus pandemic. But exactly what do we mean by contact tracing? I'm sure you've been hearing that a lot over the last few days. Senior Research Fellow at the Noguchi Memorial Institute, Dr. Kofi Bonne, explains.
Where we have gotten to, yes, we have identified some cases that we refer to them as imported cases. But these imported cases have had people that are primary contact. That is, people generally came into contact with these people. So there is a possibility that these other primary contacts will start showing symptoms. And when they start showing symptoms, quickly their samples have to be taken and they have to be tested. And as to whether they will be positive or not. See, the moment we pick the samples and we test, well, there could be some positives and it will, the numbers will go up, and there could also numbers will go up. So that is basically what it is. So at the moment we are in the stage where we have gotten the initial cases, importations, but these people have come into contact with again. What we are hoping and praying for is that we don't get to a situation where we call the community, or the community outbreak. People have gone out there that were not restrained and now are in all over the place, and they are making and they are infecting others.
So that's what it is, and I'll be updating on that 11th case. The 11th case, you understand, they haven't given us his travel history, and it suggests that it may be a person in Kumasi who had previously not traveled, who may still have it. Further clarity on that. But this is a good note to end. President Akufo-Addo has today underscored the need for prayers as the world continues to battle the coronavirus pandemic. At the breakfast prayer meeting with members of the clergy at the Jubilee House, President Akufo-Addo expressed optimism Ghana will overcome the outbreak as the country's cases of coronavirus continues to rise. It's currently at 7. Maxwell Agbagba has this report.
Reverend Dr. Joyce Ayi leading the top members of the clergy to sing at the Jubilee House. The men of God took turns to pray for Ghana. General Overseer of the Action Chapel International, Archbishop Duncan Williams, has been praying for protection for all government officials.
Divine immunity for our government. Praying, Father, for a stubborn determination, courage to withstand these difficult times, that they will have advanced knowledge and wisdom above their years.
Chairman of the Church of Pentecost, Apostle Eric Kwabena Nyamiche, prayed for healing for all coronavirus patients.
We pray for the 9 people who have already been compromised. We ask in the name of Jesus that you heal them. That you will heal them, O Lord, in the name of Jesus.
Hallelujah.
President Akufo-Addo is optimistic Ghana will overcome the pandemic, which is wreaking havoc in many other countries.
These are not ordinary times, and eminent clergy. And in such times, a country whose population is predominantly Christian must seek the face of the one true God for healing and restoration. I'm confident that this morning's prayer, which will be offered in faith, will help heal our nation and will help raise Ghana up.